Hey, Life Reconsidered. Hi, Ray. Oh, it looks like it's working, Dr. Therese. So, if you guys were here earlier, you know I was live for 3 for Thursday, and I am supposed to be doing a live right now with Dr. Therese of Exploring Therapy, but we couldn't get it to work on her end for some reason. So now I'm going to see if I can add her to my live so we can have our conversation. Let's see. Hey, y'all. I'm waiting to see if it allows her to join because it was not letting me get hers.
Hi, Dr. Joy. It worked. Little victory dance.
We are back in action.
We are. Oh my gosh. I was saying, like, if someone's gonna have technical difficulties for their first Instagram live and it's gonna be epically bad, it's gonna be me. It's like worst nightmare situation. I'm just gonna turn the volume up on you for a second. Thank you for your patience, Dr. Joy.
You're welcome. Thank you. We got it working. So I'm guessing, I hope it notified your followers too. I'm sure it did.
I think it would. And I just want to say thanks again. Hi, everyone, by the way. Hi, everyone at Therapy for Black Girls. My name is Dr. Therese. It's so nice to meet you. And actually, what we're going to do is I get to interview Dr. Joy today. So I'm so thrilled. And can I tell you, Dr. Joy, I have admired you for a really long time.
Oh, thank you.
My first experience of seeing you, I think, and I know you do this still, but I was watching you go live and I was like, is this woman simultaneously doing a Facebook Live and an Instagram Live on 2 different screens?
Yeah, it's comedy. Hey,
like
Ariana,
legendary
yes, we
status.
are. They're asking if it's going to be recorded. Can you see the comments, Dr. Therese?
I can. Yes.
Okay, yeah, we're going to save it. It'll be up for 24 hours in both of our profiles.
Yes, it will be. And so I'm so thrilled because I feel like you are often asking the questions, Dr. Joy. And today I get to put you in the hot seat and ask you some questions. And first, I just want to say that, I love having women to look up to, women that have gone a little further down the road than me. And I think there's so much that we can learn. And so I'm really just so privileged to have the opportunity and time to talk with you today. And for all of our followers, our mutual followers, to learn about you and what you do with Therapy for Black Girls. So I'm just wondering if you could start by telling us a little bit about you and kind of like what you do and what you're up to.
Yeah, so up to so many things, Dr. Therese, as we frequently are, right? So this may be a good opportunity for anybody who is maybe new to Therapy for Black Girls and like, who is this person? What does she do? So I'm Dr. Joy Horton Bradford. I'm a psychologist in Georgia. I've been licensed since 2009. And much of my career has been in working in college counseling centers. So working with students who are struggling with mental health concerns and your typical kind of college student, grad student concerns on campus. And every campus that I was on, I would always run a support group or some kind of like discussion group for the Black women on campus, because I noticed that they were not like coming into the counseling center at the same rates as other students on campus. And so I was thinking like, oh, surely, they're struggling like other students, but they're not feeling like this is a place they want to come, or there's something that's a barrier there. So I would often run groups in either like the Multicultural Student Center or Office of Diversity, whatever it was on campus. And I feel like much of that has been like the groundwork for what I do at Therapy for Black Girls. So Therapy for Black Girls in its current iteration, I guess, it was started in 2014. Wow. I started with just blog posts. So the podcast was not added until April of 2017. And then the directory, I think, was added in December of 2016.
So I feel like you're being kind of humble here because you started a long time ago. 2014 in social media world is like a long time ago. So
you're right. It is kind of dinosaur age, huh?
Yeah. And I'm just curious, like, did you see this coming? Did you see Therapy for Black Girls turning into like this vibrant community of, I think, 60,000 plus women that now follow you and listen to your podcast, and probably have even more listen to your podcast?
Yeah.
Is this what you expected?
Oh, absolutely not. I just wanted a way to, so it started, I left this part out of the story. It started after I watched the Black Girls Rock Award show on BET. And so I just remember watching it and thinking, this was such an awesome program. Like the energy was palpable. It just looked like such a cool experience. And I thought, is there a way I could like create something like this for Black women related to mental health? Like how cool would it be to have the same kind of energy around something that's so important? So I really just wanted a way to kind of talk to Black women about mental health in a way that didn't include like a lot of jargon, I feel like sometimes when we talk about mental health, it's only like anxiety and depression. But as we know, there's so much more that's involved in both mental illness and managing your mental health. So I really wanted to kind of create a space for people to talk about those kinds of things in a way that's really relevant. I did not at all see it becoming as big as it has, but am very pleased, especially by the like women I've been able to connect with. Like, it has just been incredible.
And I really did. I watched your live earlier today, and I felt like you have so much love for the women that follow you. I could just feel it I felt that community vibe, and I was like, oh my gosh, what you've built here is unparalleled. And one of the things I think I love, Dr. Joy, is this idea of like, you are representing something that people need to see. And so I was just wondering if you could share a little bit about why you think representation is so important.
Yeah, it is incredibly important. I mean, because I think, and I'm also on like this incredible Beyonce high. So
yeah, you are. I saw that.
If I reference Beyonce, then you'll know why. I'm sure many of you have also fallen in love with Homecoming all over again. I spent much of yesterday in a Beyonce cocoon. But she talks about like, you can't be something that you can't see. And so, for other people who kind of come behind me and thinking about like the representation I had in terms of like psychologists, like I remember, looking at people like Dr. Drew, who like would be the psychologist on Teen Mom and like all these other shows, and thinking like, what a cool thing. Like, you can use psychology in a way that's not just like in your office or teaching. Like, there are so many different things that you can do. And so to get the opportunity to do Teen Mom like Dr. Drew did, and then to have a conversation with somebody who's a current psych student and say, I saw you there, and now it makes me think I can do that, right? And so it's a never-ending circle, right? And so for me, it is really important to kind of be an opportunity or an example, both for psychologists of like all of the different things we can do with these degrees we spend so much time getting, but also for other young Black women kind of coming up behind me thinking like, okay, this is cool. I would like to do something like her.
I was like literally getting goosebumps while you were saying that, because I know for me, a moment like that for me where I felt like, oh my gosh, something's changing and I'm being represented, was when I saw Crazy Rich Asians. And I cried in the theater, and I didn't expect it. It really kind of like overwhelmed me. And so I think you don't even realize what you're missing until you see yourself represented. Right. And suddenly it is such a validating thing. And so I would love to, I can feel your heart for like, and your passion through what you're saying, but would you share with the people that are following with us right now, like what your personal mission is?
Yeah. So I feel like my personal mission is so I'm a huge pop culture fan. And so you probably already have gotten that. So I feel like my personal mission is to do as much in terms of integrating both psychology and pop culture for people to kind of understand how psychology is a part of like our everyday lives. So I really feel like it's my mission to do a lot of translation between what I went to school for and, kind of giving the knowledge away to people in a way that can be helpful for their lives.
Yeah. So when I hear that, I'm like, yes, it's for people, and make it accessible. Don't make it something that's just like pie in the sky. And yes, let's make it real. And that's actually kind of why I started exploring therapy. I should probably tell, since some of your followers know who I am. My name's Dr. Therese. I started exploring therapy because I felt like people were living for their weekends and for their vacations. And literally the whole space in the 5 days in the middle of the week, their 9 to 5, they were just trying to skim through it to get to the weekend. And so I created Exploring Therapy because I wanted to create a conversation about what health and wellness looks like, but specifically about building a life that you do not need a vacation from. And I think that's so, so important. And so I love that, being a therapist, I don't know if you know this, being a psychologist is like considered one of the top jobs in general, and also specifically one of the top paying jobs for women. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. So I just love that so much. And I love that we, I think we're given a platform here. So with that said, I wanted to ask you if you would share your thoughts on stigma. So we talk a lot about mental health stigma. And I was curious if you saw that mental health stigma might look different in the Black community. Could you tell me your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think in a lot of communities, there is some hesitance about like what it means to talk to a therapist. Like, who is the stranger that I'm telling all my business to? You know, I think a lot of people are weirded out about that.
Yeah.
But I think in particular for the Black community, there are a lot of, I think, historical factors that have made that an increased stigma. So one, you know, like families typically are taught like what goes on in our house stays in our house. So, you know, the idea of talking to a stranger about some pretty personal stuff that you may not even have talked to your parents or your loved ones about is like a no-no. Like you don't tell people what goes on in our family. I also think that there are some real connections to like religion and spirituality in terms of thinking that if you need to talk to a therapist or if you're suffering from a mental illness, that means you have a weakened faith relationship or that, you know, you're not strong enough in your walk with God or whatever. You know, and of course we know that's not the truth, but I think a lot of that has kind of shaped the narrative around mental health and therapy for Black people, which, you know, results in them not seeking the services as much as they may want to.
I'm glad you brought up the faith component because I definitely found that in my own experience as well, growing up Filipino Catholic. So absolutely that insular, like you don't share your stuff with people. And then the faith component, absolutely. And there's an account I love. By the way, people are asking how long we're going to be. We're probably going to be about 15, 20 minutes. It's going to be a short conversation. Is that okay with you, Dr. Joy?
Yeah, totally fine.
Okay, cool. But yeah, growing up in a faith community, it was like somehow people believe that mental health and pursuing that and faith couldn't coexist. And so I was, I think I was going to mention that my friend Brittany Moses started this account called Christian Mental Health. And I don't know if you're familiar with them, but the whole account is to encourage Christians that it's okay to go to therapy and pursue mental health. And I just love her for that.
Yeah, I'm really encouraged to see more churches and pastors doing more talking about, you know, the need for therapists and bringing therapists into the congregations to give presentations and that kind of thing. Because I do think that once it comes from like somebody who you consider, you know, like your figurehead in your religion, then it becomes a more okay thing. So I'm glad to see so many churches welcoming therapists into the doors now.
Slowly but surely.
Right.
I had a small stint working in ministry, and I definitely tried to like do my part for that as well. By the way, I should pause. I'm being really bad about this, but there's so many comments coming in. Eden Cloud says, "I love that you are both doing this. Oh, your energy is radiating. Thank you so much."
Eden Cloud.
And let's see what else. And Damsel Not Distressed says, "People of color definitely face a hardship when it comes to facing mental health." Absolutely, and that's why I am so inspired by this woman right here, Dr. Joy, because she's trying to change that. And let's see, are there different stigmas within the Black community between Black men and Black women? Oh, interesting question. By my friend PNT1 over here, Noah. Any thoughts on that, Dr. Joy?
I mean, I definitely think it is much more difficult for Black men to seek services of a therapist, just because, again, this whole idea of like what masculinity means and you always have to have it together and you're the head of the household, you have to, you know, embody this strength. So the idea of talking to someone, does that make you weak? Are people really going to understand me? What does this mean about me as a man if I have to talk with someone? Like, I think it definitely is much more difficult for Black men, for sure.
Yeah. One of my favorite accounts that represents Black men is Dr. Alduan Tart. Dr. Tart. Love him. He talks about faith as well. So he's really awesome.
Yeah, another great one for that is Rashawn. So he has an account called You Stress, and his whole movement is like, why you stressing, which is super cool, and does a lot of great things for, like, he has these things called locker room chats where people will like get on the phone and like have conversations with one another and check in with each other. So there are lots of people who are doing some really great work in terms of helping Black men to take care of their mental health as well.
I love that. So that's called You Stressed. Okay, guys, check that out. That sounds amazing. I'm gonna check him out after this. So something that affects men and women is something that you love to talk about, that I think you specialize in, which is breakups, recovering from breakups. So Dr. Joy, why is recovering from breakups so difficult?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult. And what I have found is that a lot of times the difficulty with the breakup is not so much about the person. Of course, you know, you miss this person who you maybe have, you know, thought about having a life with and, you know, spent a significant amount of time with and all of that stuff. But really the more difficult part of the breakup I found is that letting go of the story of what your life was going to be with this person.
Ooh.
So, if you have kind of built this fairy tale about, this person kind of being the person who takes you away from like a rough life, or you envisioned yourself living the rest of your life with this person and having the, white picket fence and 2.5 kids and all of these different things. So really the grief comes from having to let go of that story even more than it is about that person.
It's the picture you had in your head of what was going to happen.
Right.
And then come to terms with that not happening anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Breakups are so rough. And I feel like the pain of a breakup is like a very unique kind of a pain. Like it's one of the worst. And I know you just mentioned kind of connecting that to grief. And one of the things that has really been on my heart is the passing of Nipsey Hussle. One, because I'm based here in LA, and he was obviously a legend here. If you guys don't know Nipsey Hussle, he was an artist, a rapper, and just thought outside the box. Like he really felt like he was gonna, he was really working towards changing the world, and encouraged people to have good financial health, encouraged them to really pursue their dreams. And so I know my pastor at one church, Pastor Torrey Roberts, he was talking about how amazing Nipsey was, and he said, you can't kill a soul, you can't kill a spirit, which I thought was so amazing. And I just wanted to hear what thoughts come to your mind when you think about how people are grieving Nipsey's passing. I listened to your podcast about him, and you said something that I thought was so insightful. You said his passing, part of why we can grieve someone we've never met before is because it touches on other wounds you didn't even know were there. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and I did that podcast because I saw so many people not only struggling with the grief, but people were very confused, I think, about why they were feeling so intensely about somebody, people who hadn't even been following his music, didn't even really know very much about him. But I think the more people shared about who he was to them and what he was doing in the community, people really identified with what a huge loss this was for, his community, for the Black community, for, just tons of communities. And so I think when there is a public grief like there was with his death, it does open up some stuff that we didn't know that we were not really healed with. So anytime there's a new thing that happens, it has the potential to trigger something in you that isn't all the way healed or didn't quite heal in the way that maybe you thought it did, right? So, it may not even necessarily be another death in your life. It could be something like a breakup or some major transition that you really hadn't paid attention to and had not really appropriately processed. So I think when there's a major loss like this, it just has a tendency to make people very reflective, and really kind of causes them to go inward to kind of think about okay, what's happening in my own life and what kinds of things are unhealed for me.
Well, I one of the things that I think the silver lining to tragedy, if there is one, right? Because tragedy is so terrible.
Right.
But one of the things that I think has been beautiful coming out of that is people really looking inwardly and having conversations. And I don't know if you saw this, but one of the things that really moved me was seeing gangs here in LA walking together, honoring him. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this is really shaking up people from the inside, and it's bringing out some of the best in us. So just what an honor to his spirit, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've been very moved by those outward kinds of gestures.
Dr. Joy, do you have time for a couple more questions?
Yeah. I see we missed a couple in the comments too, so I definitely want to try to catch people's questions if we can.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Why don't we take a second to do this? So, wow, there are some great questions coming through. Do you think that colorism within all our communities is an issue we have nearly resolved, or do we have a long way to go?
Oh, yeah. So if you missed that, I'm not sure who asked that question, but I actually did a 3 for Thursday with Dr. Donna Oriowo last week. So she just came out with an amazing workbook / journal related to colorism and texturism. That's kind of like a self-guided thing to help you work through your own issues with your skin color and hair texture. So the name of that book is Cocoa Butter and Hair Grease, which is super cool. But the video is saved on Facebook. So if you go to facebook.com/therapy for Black girls, you can catch my conversation with Dr. Donna Oriowo, and definitely make sure to follow her too, because that is her lane of expertise. But basically what we talked about in that conversation was that we do have a long way to go related to that, and that there's still lots more more work to do. So definitely check that one out. That was just last week.
Thank you for that. And we'll have to recap kind of all the different ways people can connect with you afterward. Are there any other questions you want to address real quickly, Dr. Joy?
I haven't. Well, I see Eaton is saying, do you work with African spiritual religions, or how could that be incorporated into therapy? I don't personally, Eaton, but I know there are lots of colleagues who do some of that work. You know, the Association of Black Psychologists, oftentimes they have practitioners who do incorporate a lot of that into their work. So if you want to look at their website, I think it's abpsi.com, and you may be able to find different kinds of resources related to that.
Thank you, Dr. Joy. So while we have a couple of minutes left, I was wondering if I could ask you about social media.
Yes.
Since you're a queen of social media, I've been at this for about a year and learning so much, but I don't know about you. When I was starting my account, I was petrified because in grad school, we're taught like, don't disclose, don't share about yourself. And I really like wrestled with what it would look like to be a therapist, sharing, you know, some personal things in a public sphere. So I would just love to know your thoughts about what's going on with mental health professionals on Instagram, and specifically your thoughts about why it's important to see a licensed mental health professional if you think that's important.
Yeah, I have been very excited to see more licensed mental health professionals doing more on Instagram, because the bottom line is that people are looking for and need this information from somewhere, and who better for it to come from than people who are licensed and doing this work for a living. I think that that's really important, because I think in the interest of people wanting to be helpful, sometimes I see some information that is completely inaccurate. And so I really want people to be careful in terms of like what kinds of things they are consuming, and what kinds of accounts you're following, because I think a lot of people talk a lot of like self-help, personal development jargon. And again, I think the intention is to be helpful, but sometimes the intention is not backed by any like science or training and can actually be really harmful. So I'm very excited to see more therapists doing more on Instagram and across social media. And your other question was something about...
I was asking you, hold on, I actually wrote it down here. No, you answered it. It was like why it's important to see a licensed mental health professional, which you already addressed.
Yeah, I mean, you know, because I think, again, while there is more kind of in pop culture, these words thrown around like triggered and trauma and, you know, like all of that kind of thing. And so I think sometimes we think we have like a background surface understanding of what that's talking about. But there are people who like go to school for years and even after school do lots and lots of training to be able to help people with like trauma and to kind of unpack a lot of this. And so you just have to really be careful with, again, the kinds of information that you're consuming, and making sure that you, if you're making appointments and stuff like that, to make sure that you do your homework to check out to make sure that the license is in good standing, and that they have the appropriate certifications and specializations to do the kind of work that you need them to help you with.
Great advice, Dr. Joy. Yeah, and I think you boiled down to this, like if it was one thing, it'd be science, like having scientific backing for the things that you're suggesting. Someone in the questions asked, you know, how do you find a good therapist? And obviously looking at licensure is a really good place to start. I also think that's one of the benefits of social media is I always recommend to people to really make sure, like to shop around. It's kind of like dating, find someone you have chemistry with. And when you're on Instagram and you see content from a potential therapist, you can see whether you vibe with them. You know?
Yeah, and that's, again, I think another perk of therapists being more active on social media, because people are shopping around for therapists. And I agree, I think that you should. But if people can't get a feel for your personality, or they don't know exactly what you've been trained in, then it makes it easier for them to choose someone else who may not actually be as good of a fit as you. But if you're not out there and, you know, visible and letting people kind of get to know you and the work you do, then it makes it more difficult for people to find you. So I think that's another plus of it.
Hey, so to all the therapists watching us right now, get out there.
Yes.
See you, make your voice heard.
Yes.
I love that. And by the way, PNT1 asked, what's the best resource to background check? Do you have thoughts about that for finding a therapist, background checking them?
Background check. So usually every state has a board of counselors, so board of psychology, board of licensed marriage and family therapists. So you would want to check your particular states to make sure that you're looking through, like you can typically put in the person's name and their license and stuff will come up. So that would be my recommendation. That's probably going to be the most accurate and up-to-date information.
Check your board. That's easy.
Yes.
We can do that. All
Yeah.
right. So I got to ask you this. It's kind of a slightly personal question, but
Okay.
you are so prolific. I mean, if that image of you doing the Facebook Live and Instagram Live at the same time is not like just a metaphor for your life, you are so prolific. So I would love to know, Dr. Joy, what inspired you? Where do you get your hustle from? And also, like, what accounts, what shows, what podcasts, what books do you love? If you want to share them with the people that are watching with us right now.
Yeah, I think, I think my hustle, honestly, I had like one vision for my life in terms of like building like a great private practice. I wanted to help people and do, like that is kind of what my goal was until like really 2 years ago. And so I feel like really the hustle that I have now really comes from my community. Like I stay in constant conversation with like the women who are listening to the podcast and who follow our accounts on social media. Like I'm always paying attention, even when you don't know that I am, right? Because I want to know what kinds of questions are important to you. I want to know what kind of topics you want to hear more information about, because again, it's important for people to have accurate information. And so I really feel like just kind of staying in contact and always being in conversation with my community really has fueled all of the work that I've done. In terms of podcasts, I listen to so many podcasts, y'all. That's actually why I started the podcast, because I thought, oh, this is really great. It sounds really easy. Of course, it's not until you get behind the scenes that you realize how much work is involved. One of my favorites is the Hidden Brain podcast. Do you listen to that one, Dr. Therese?
Okay, confession. I am trying to get more into podcasts. I'm remember the technological issues part?
Oh, yes.
I'm trying to build the habit, but here in LA we have long drives, so we can
yes,
listen to
that's
podcasts.
how I started. Yeah, we have long drives in Atlanta too, because there's always lots of traffic. So Hidden Brain is one of my favorites. I also really love the Read and Getting Grown podcast. They're super like funny, but also like educational and like serious sometimes. What other ones do I listen to? If I showed you my list, I could, of course, bring up all of the ones that I listen to, but those are the ones that are coming to the top of my head now. And in terms of books, so I'm currently reading Playing Big by Dr. Tara Moore. I think it's either Playing Big or Playing Small. I forget the name of it. But I also love all Dr. Brene Brown stuff. I mean, people who listen to the podcast know that we reference them all the time. So those are some of my favorites.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I always love when I have people that I'm like, what inspires you? I want to know what they're reading, what podcasts that they're listening to, so I can like copy it. So, okay, so Dr. Joy, you're a professional question asker, right? We as therapists is what we do. Yeah. So I was wondering, do you have a favorite question that you like to ask people to get to know them?
Ooh. I always really enjoy hearing about relationships. So I like for people to tell me, talk to me about the people who are important to you in your relationship with them.
Ooh. Yes.
Because I think that also gives people like space to go beyond family, right? Like we often think like, okay, tell me about your parents, but people's conceptualization of who's important to them in their circle can be very much, beyond that. So I like to just give them space to kind of go from there.
Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah, because it might not be your immediate family.
Right. And if they don't say immediate family, I think that's also telling, right?
Yes, so, it is.
Exactly.
Can't get anything past a therapist.
There's always another point, always more perspective.
So, Dr. Joe, before we run out of time.
Yeah.
Oh, hi there, Boss Bunny Mara, by the way. Thanks for being here. So, in mental health, we do something to work with our clients sometimes called sentence completions, right? And so it's basically just a fill in the blank, and it's just to see where your mind's at, what's kind of going on. So would you be willing to do a couple sentence completions with me?
Sure.
Okay. I am most excited about
Beyonce.
My followers all just added you right now because you're speaking like our heart and
Welcome
soul.
to the Hive. I sometimes refer to myself as the chief psychologist of the Beehive. So, I mean, you are all welcome here.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So I have to tell you the story of when I ran into Michelle Williams. And she's kind of, she's close. She's in proximity at church. At church, wow. Yeah, she was so nice.
Very cool.
Okay, next sentence to complete would be I am a little worried about.
Ooh, I am a little worried about our world because it feels like there's just a lot of like every day you turn on the news and there's like some new thing that's happened. or a new mass shooting, something political. So I'm worried about our world right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's why people need good mental health to help them get through it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, last one is I had a good one too. What was it? It skipped my mind.
You forgot it.
Oh, okay. Hold on. If I do a dance, it'll
Do a little dance, it'll come back.
Yeah, it was this. Oh, I love this one.
Okay.
So I secretly enjoy.
Ooh. I secretly enjoy eating dry Frosted Flakes.
Like no milk.
No milk.
Straight out of the box. All right. No judgment. I love it. I mean,
although I don't know how much of a secret it is because I like walk around with the box in my house. So it's not really a secret, but probably it's not anything you guys know.
Listen, if I got into all the things I secretly enjoy that are snacks, we could be here all day. So I feel you. I appreciate it. I mean, it's great. And lastly, Dr. Joy, and thank you again so much for your time today.
Yeah.
So before I ask you my last question, can you just let us know where people can find you, where they can get more information about you?
Yeah, so if you visit the website at therapyforblackgirls.com, you will find all of our incredible resources. So there's a weekly podcast, which you heard us reference, that drops every Wednesday. There's also a therapist directory on the website. So if you go to therapyforblackgirls.com/directory, there's a directory that has over 1,300 therapists across the country who love doing great clinical work with Black women and girls. So if you're looking for a therapist and don't know where to start, that may be a great place for you to start and find it. And you can find all of that at therapyforblackgirls.com. Definitely hit the follow button on Instagram so you can stay up to date with like all of our news and events and everything.
Yes, and I mean, all of that is so good. So many good resources, but the podcast is amazing.
Thank you.
So please check it out. She is so eloquent. I love it.
Thank you.
And so, Dr. Joy, my last question for you today is, how do you want to be remembered?
Ooh, I want to be remembered as somebody who really cared and invested in my community.
Well, I think that is already happening. So
thank you. I hope so.
Yeah, you know, I so appreciate that you have shared with us today, like just your heart of service toward your community, the women that are so drawn to you. Mm-hmm. I certainly am one of them. We have to come up with a name for your hive, right? Like,
Beehive is already taken. I need a hive name, guys.
Joy, did you say which one's already taken?
The Beehive.
Oh, no, so maybe the Joy Hive? I don't know.
That doesn't have the same ring, but I'll think of it.
All right, bad ideas from me, but thank you so much. And by the way, thanks to everybody who followed us today.
Yes, thank you.
The technical difficulties, and everyone be blessed.
Yes, have a great rest of y'all's day. Bye.
Enjoy. Bye.